Jay.
So they tell me that there's going to be some modern regionals this weekend?
Coming up March 7th. So 8 or 9 days from the time of this airing. Not quite this weekend, but the weekend after. So 8 or 9 days will be regionals all over the country. The SCG ones, and they're modern this time, which honestly, I mean, Pioneer's been pretty cool. I'm kind of in medium protest as I kind of am just not into playing against Inverter anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just wait out Pioneer for a little while. But the good news is that there's a lot of moving and shaking in Modern. And with Modern, the regionals format, it's actually a great time to take a look at just how much stuff has evolved already. Not the least of which is because of some of the heavy hitters in the last two sets. Like a deck after your own heart in terms of just merging and hybridizing decks. You might be into Ryan Bennett's third place list from the Classic in Indianapolis. It's like two hybrid decks that merge two other decks, each merged. So it's just like it's so many decks at the same time. This is a Grixis Urza Lord High Artificer deck, so you're like, okay, Urza Lord High Artificer, cool, I could vibe with it, right? You're like, oh yeah, and like Thopter Sword. Sure, why wouldn't you put Thopter Sword with Urza? That sounds pretty good. And Emery? Well, yeah, that sounds good with both of those cards. Well, what if you used Emery with Underworld Breach? And what if you used Emery and Underworld Breach with Grinding Station?
Wow. So
this is so many things going on that actually kind of awesomely fit together.
So there's just like mad overlapping circles here, right? And we're just like, wow, so Emery has this pretty cool ability, right? And this other pretty cool ability, and it has the word graveyard on it. Underworld Breach likes the graveyard. Why not?
Oh, yeah. And remember, when you Emery, you get to play an artifact out of your graveyard. And when you have Grinding Station in play, every time you play an artifact out of your graveyard, you get to untap Grinding Station. All of your Grinding Stations, in fact. And each of your Grinding Stations can either be used with Urza for even more mana, or they can be used to tap and sacrifice an artifact to mill yourself even more to keep it going.
So you want to be milling yourself in this deck?
Extremely. You even have one Thassa's Oracle, because sometimes it goes that way. Like, you can mill yourself and set up Thopter Sword, right? Because Emery can also get the Thopter Foundry out of your graveyard, and Sword of the Meek obviously jumps out of your graveyard, right? But you also, your Grinding Stations hitting yourself and your Emery milling yourself, they give you more fuel so that when you Underworld Breach, you actually can just go hard. And remember, you've got Sly Requisitioner in here. This is kind of
what I had to read. Sly Requisitioner.
Yeah, it's 4 and a black for a 2/2 artificer, a human artificer with improvise, and this is from Kaladesh block, so you know it's spicy. So it's a 2/2 improvise, which means you can tap your artifacts to help cast it. For one less per artifact you tap. And then it also has the ability, whenever a non-token artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. So you can actually, say for instance that you had an artifact going to the graveyard, like say, I don't know, Thopter Foundry. Not Thopter Foundry, Sword of the Meek. Because you have Grinding Station. You see, you can you tap Grinding Station, sacrifice the Sword of the Meek, and and target yourself to mill yourself for 3. And by Sword of the Meek going to the graveyard, you get a 1/1 from Sly Requisitioner, and the Sword of the Meek is already in the graveyard at the time you get the 1/1 from Sly Requisitioner.
Because it's a sacrifice, right? So the sacrifice happens, then the trigger goes on the stack, right?
Right, but also remember, the 1/1 token is an artifact, so you get to untap your Grinding Station. And after you tap it again, you could even mill your opponent if you want. But like you get to have the sword come back, and the sword coming back means you get to untap the grinding station again.
So the Sly Requisitioner is already just friends with Sword of the Meek, right? Like the 1/1s are
extremely good friends. If you have a sack outlet, you can go infinite, and in the case of Grinding Station, you win. If you assemble Grinding Station, Sword of the Meek, and Sly Requisitioner, you win. You get to keep untapping. You get to untap the Grinding Station twice per loop. And each time, it doesn't cost you any mana, and it doesn't cost you anything. You get to keep tapping the Grinding Station with and sacrificing the Sword of the Meek. If you want, you can even sacrifice the 1/1 servo you make, so you can tap the Grinding Station twice. So even if you don't get all three of those, they spiderweb into other combos that you have. That 3-card combo wins, and it wins fast. Remember, Grinding Station only costs 2, and Sword of the Meek only costs 2 if you even have to cast it, which you don't have to. You could actually just discard it. If you go turn 2 Grinding Station, and you just so happen to mill a Sword of the Meek, like, you can already just win on the next turn with Sly Requisitioner.
This
deck is fast, right? And you've got zeros. You've got Mox Amber, and you've got Everflowing Chalice, which you can just play as a 0, and you've got Engineered Explosives. And that's all, not even counting that Arkham's Astrolab isn't exactly expensive, right? So you've got plenty of ways to do it. But then also, if you have Emery, you can actually just be getting a huge amount of value by you're milling yourself even more, and you're putting tons of permanents into play, setting up all these various combos. But even if they kill Emery, the damage is done. By Emery entering the battlefield, you already got to mill yourself 4 more cards, and it only cost 1 mana. And that's if they have the kill spell. And if you ever get to Underworld Breach, forget about it. Because remember, if you have Underworld Breach, you can loop stuff over and over and over again. Like, every time you Grinding Station, like if you have Grinding Station in play, let's say let's just do a super, super simple example. You've got 2 Grinding Stations, and you've got a 0, like Mox Amber or Chalice or Explosives, anything, Mishra's Bauble, whatever. You play the 0 out of your graveyard, exiling 5 cards to Underworld Breach, and you play it for 0. Then you get to tap the Grinding Station. Like, because the zeros come into play, because the artifacts come into play, you get to untap your Grinding Stations. Then you can tap 1 Grinding Station and sacrifice it. Target yourself, mill yourself for 3 again. And you tap the other Grinding Station and mill yourself for 3, sacrificing another 0. And you don't have to use all your Grinding Stations every time, but every time you play a 0, you get to untap all your Grinding Stations. And every 0 you play, if you have 2 Grinding Stations, you're milling yourself for 0 mana, and you can just do this for your whole deck. And even if you don't have 2 Grinding Stations, you're going really fast because you get to keep milling yourself for 3 cards, and then you exile 5, and you mill yourself for 3, and you exile 5, so you would fall behind eventually. But you get to mill 30-something cards first, and hopefully you find anything else. Because if you have Mox Amber, you can make mana. If you have, if you find Sword of the Meek, you can win. If you get multiple zeros, I mean, you get the idea. You can just go off. There's so many different ways this deck goes off.
Yeah, there's just a ton of overlapping different engines here, right? Like,
we didn't even talk about Urza,
Well, I mean, so if you have Sword of the Meek, Thopter Foundry, that's just like a pretty good 2-card combination, right? Where you can create a number of potential attackers or defenders equal to how much mana that you have, more or less. But when you have Urza, High Lord Artificer, you basically win, right? You come very, very close to winning just by having those cards in concert. There must be some cute thing with Underworld Breach in these Moxes, right? You can't actually just infinitely loop the Moxes because you'll run out of cards in your graveyard, but you can make probably a lot of mana if you have the Grinding Station action.
Well, you can Well, you can loop it. Like if you had 2 grinding stations, you can loop. And if you have 1 grinding station, you can go so big that it's basically academic. And if you've got Urza, you don't even need a Mox. You could just be using anything as a Mox.
Yeah, but Urza is cheating. I was just thinking about like what's a new different thing. So a lot of these things have existed before, right? Like Urza already was playing nicely with Thopter Foundry and Sword of the Meek. And, I was just kind of thinking about why would we go the Underworld Breach route rather than some of the existing engines? And
oh my God, there's so many things. Like if you've got grinding the key is that grinding station plus Underworld Breach is broken. Those two together make everything a killer combo. If you've got grinding station and Arkham's Astrolab, you can keep spending 1 mana to draw a card with selection. Like you're drawing a card and you're milling yourself a lot. So like your ability to deck yourself is so fast. This deck is definitely, when this deck gets optimized, this deck is definitely getting 1 or more cards banned from Modern.
That's awesome.
There's no way that Underworld Breach will be, like, this card is going to break Underworld Breach. It's the most broke. Urza is already extremely abusive, and Emery is extremely abusive, and obviously Arkham's Astrolab is just, like, stupidly efficient. And then the Thopter Foundry Sword of the Meek combo is very good. You already have all of those things going on. If you just add Underworld Breach to the mix, which breaks with so many of these, I guess I don't know for sure that you couldn't ban Grinding Station instead.
Oh, come on.
But it would be really weird because Underworld Breach is just going to break with other stuff. Yeah, so, I mean, I guess, I don't know for sure that this specific package would actually, like, it's possible that you could ban Grinding Station and Underworld Breach, like, this deck would be okay, but I don't think so, because I think Underworld Breach is just going to break with half a dozen other things anyway. The other part of the problem, though, is that Sly Requisitioner is actually really good with Grinding Station. You just need to have 1 more combo with Grinding Station, and Grinding Station plus Underworld Breach is just stupidly good.
Well, I can't believe that Sly Requisitioner has jumped up the Modern ladder like this. Like no one ever talked about this card before, did it?
Only a little when Kaladesh first came out, but even now it is slower than other stuff. I would not be surprised if in the end you shave some or even cut the, like, it's, I don't know, for the Requisitioner combo is not the first, second, or third best thing going on here. It's a 3-card combo, and one of the cards costs 5 mana. Even though you can play it on turn 3, it's good, but lots of things in this deck are really, really good. And the Requisitioner is much more fragile than most of the it's a 2/2 with no protective ability.
Is this deck... So, let's think about this for a sec.
Yeah.
Is this deck... It's pretty bad against Stony Silence, right?
It's crushed. Yeah, all the super duper duper, like, think about what you would use against a KCI deck, like a Krark Clan Ironworks deck, combined with what you would use against a Dredge deck. This deck has it has most of the weaknesses of KCI and most of the weaknesses of Dredge.
So you can cold it from either side, right? So I was thinking like maybe this could just withstand Rest in Peace, but it can't withstand Stony Silence unopposed, right? That's what it looks like.
Definitely, you're right. Yeah, if you can fight through a Rest in Peace, you're not happy about it, but you can just grind with Urza. It's not a great way to do it, but you're not dead. You can also get people with grinding stations sometimes if they're not putting pressure on you, but it's not good. You don't even get to, like, it's not a good situation for you. Stony Silence, on the other hand, you're basically paralyzed until you get rid of Stony Silence.
So I guess
your best plan is, again, Urza, because you can just make a 7/7, and that's what you're going to try to do.
Yeah, let's go. And he can make him pretty big, right? Like you can get stuff out whether or not it actually works. This deck
Well, you
has-
also, even if they have the Stony Silence, Sly Requisitioner still goes big. You don't get to activate your sack outlets or whatever, but like, no, I don't know. It's going to be too hard. Yeah, this deck, all of its outlets are actually the same, are the artifacts. So forget that.
But you have like Nature's Claim.
Even Engineer Explosives can get Rest in Peace off the table. Yeah, they have Nature's Claim and Echoing Truth and Aether Gust. I don't think Aether Gust is a great way to do it, but
I mean, I think
the sideboard needs work.
well, it depends on how targeted the deck is, right? So the thing is that I guess there's been Urza decks and they've been high-performing decks, all kinds of stuff like Jeskai Ascendancy decks and Thopter Sword decks and hybrid decks with Stoneforge Mystics, etc. So it's not like this is a new thing that we might have to deal with artifacts in Modern. But, I mean, to this degree, no. I think, people have been fighting artifacts with cards like, Smash to Smithereens or Shattering Spree, depending on, archetype, less Stony Silences, more things that can deal damage, I think. But I guess, if there was blue-white decks or something, maybe they'd fight with Stony Silence. But I just think, red-white decks have kind of shifted away from Stony Silence towards stuff that deals damage, and I think they're kind of going to have to go back the other way if this thing picks up.
Yeah, I mean, Stony Silence is definitely, the best thing you can do against this, but it actually wasn't that popular this past weekend. I think you're absolutely right. People have moved
This is the new thing.
But it did have a little bit of trouble with Leyline of the Void and Ashiok, the Dream Render. If you take a look at the finals were actually two different Jund decks. One Jund Death Shadow, which lost in the finals to a more traditional Jund. And both of them, this is going to make you happy, both of them featured two main deck copies of Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. Wasting no time putting up a big finish.
Yeah, I did notice that. Kroxa is... I think it's an interesting choice in traditional Jund, especially. I guess it falls under the traditional Jund category of a card that generates card advantage and is also potentially a threat. It's in the vein of a Bloodbraid Elf.
Yeah, the only thing that's tough is that if you Bloodbraid Elf and flip up Kroxa, it's not actually good.
It's fine. It's like flipping up kind of like a Blightning, and then you just got some fetch lands or something. You can get them back.
What you really want in this deck is Renin 6 and Liliana. That's what's really popping in this deck.
I think it's kind of crazy if you look at the last few sets that have been released. I think including the Modern focus set that gave us such cards as Arkham's Astrolabe, Urza, and Renin 6, and then through Throne of Eldraine, and then through the most recent set that we have, Theros Beyond Death. After Throne of Eldraine, I would not have guessed that the next set after it was going to have nearly the profound impact of the set that gave us Oko and Once Upon a Time, but I was wrong. These sets are crazy impactful to large formats.
Oh, yeah. And that's not even, it's also some of the reprints in certain spots, like Modern Masters. We're finally seeing, not Modern Masters, but, Horizons, Pillage in the sideboard. That's an interesting eyebrow-raising card.
Pillage. Oh, my gosh. I'm pretty sure that was in the first deck I ever won a PTQ with back in 1996. Oh, wow. Can't be regenerated.
That's a throwback joint. No regenerating your lands. And this Jund Death Shadow, here's a card for you. Check out Lightning Skelemental.
I like it. Yeah, I like it.
This, oh my God, P. Sully would be proud. Lightning Skelemental in Death Shadow Jund with Kroxa. When you just curve, turn 2 Kroxa, turn 3 Lightning Skelemental. Now it's a plan. You've even got Unearth to get back Lightning Skelemental. Or, I guess, Kroxa, but way better to be Lightning Skelemental.
Yeah, that's not a really great thing to do. I guess it's fine. It's 1 mana. But, Yeah, Unearth Lightning Skelemental seems pretty fantastic.
Well, dude, and when you teamer Battle Rage, you get to make them discard 4 cards.
Oh well, I can tell you,
and you train them for 12.
I have hit an Urzatron player with a Lightning Skelemental before and still lost to his many Wormcoil engines. But it is an exciting card, and I think unearthing it is pretty fantastic. Obviously, there's great synergy between cards like Unearth and cards like Death Shadow that have a very outsized impact relative to their casting cost. Do you think that adding all of these like hyper aggro cards to Death Shadow is cool or good?
I have no idea if it's good. Odds are medium, but definitely very cool. And I don't know. I mean, Modern is so wide open right now. There might be some value to just hitting from a weird angle. The fact that both finalists were Jund and had a bunch of this Jund stuff going on, it's kind of interesting, right? Like
it's just weird to me to look at a deck that's like pushing so hard on the Kroxa / Lightning Skelemental angle on their deck, but then just doesn't have Lightning Bolt, right? Like, isn't that kind of weird?
Well, what does Lightning Bolt even kill besides the Lightning Skelemental?
I mean,
it can kill Urza.
It kills opponents.
I guess it kills Sly Requisitioner and Emery.
It does.
Yeah, I guess. Dude, Teamer Battle Rage kills opponents.
Teamer Battle Rage does kill opponents.
But but circling back to what we were talking about with Breach, the Grixis Urza Breach deck, if you look at both of these Jund decks, they have so much graveyard hate. Scavenging Oozes and Ashiok and Grafdigger's Cage and Leyline of the Void. There's just so much graveyard hate.
Yeah.
And once people add Stony Silence...
So I'm looking at this. I think that there is a different deck hiding in this Jund Death Shadow deck. If you look at it, he's got Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. He's got Lightning Skelemental. Look at this sideboard. He's got Hazoret the Fervent. This deck wants to be somebody else.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's just like, it's...
Sort of. It mostly wants to be somebody else, but it also has a Tireless Tracker and a Scavenging Ooze for when it wants to go back to its roots.
Yeah, like, I respect the card quality that's in this deck, but this deck desperately wants to be somebody else.
It is confusing to me. Hazoret in the sideboard, but no Lightning Bolts in the deck. Yeah. I guess you can traverse to the Hazoret.
Hazoret is not playing, right? Like, this is... Yeah, I don't know. Let's look at the regular Jund deck. Maybe there's somebody hiding it. No, this regular Jund deck is just no bones about it. He's playing the control, right? And they're both named Michael. So one of them, the Michael F one, which sounds fantastic to me. But this is just like Bloodbraid Elf, Card Advantage guy, Scavenging Ooze, Grindy guy. Tarmogoyf is Tarmogoyf. Kroxa is Card Advantage grindy. Liliana grindy. Renansic Card Advantage grindy. This deck just wants to be the control in every matchup, I think. And then it's like hyper disruptive anti-combo with like Thoughtseize, Inquisition, Colligan's Command, and then after sideboarding, he's gonna damp you, he's gonna fulminate you, he's gonna pillage you. I do think that even with cards like Ashiok Dreamrender, if that sort of breachy Urza 14 different combos Embry deck picks up, he's going to have to invest in more ley lines, etc., and fewer of these specialty sort of things. Although, oh man, Kitchen Finks and Huntmaster of the Fells. See, he knows who he wants to be. There's no misplaced Hazoret here, right? Look,
yep.
Give me a turn 3 Kitchen Finks and a turn 4 Huntmaster of the Fells. I know who I'm going to try to beat. And Collective Brutality?
Yeah.
This is
it's pure. It's pure.
This is a terrible person of enormous focus.
So notably, you hit it exactly with that whole fighting combos aspect, because the two finalists were the two Jund decks that were trying to mess up combo decks. The entire rest of the top 8 was combo. This included 4 Titan decks, of a variety of forms. So there were some of the Amulet Titan decks that have the new edition of Dryad of the Ilsean Grove. And every time I see decks like this, it's just so you have to do a double take where you're like, wait a minute, Once Upon a Time is still legal in Modern? What?
It is.
What? So, yeah, what do you think of this use of Dryad of Grove?
So
when you have Dryad of the Ilsean Grove, you get to play, an extra land per turn, which is really sweet with Amulet of Vigor and the Karus and everything. But also, every one of your lands counts as every basic land type, which means you get to put 2 Valakuts in your deck, even though you have no mountains.
yeah, that is the cool part of it. I think like it is. What was that Omen that people used to play in the kind of
Prismatic Omen.
Yeah, Prismatic Omen action. When I first saw this card, I was just like, oh, this is weird. This is much worse than Courser of Crufix. But it's not if you're playing a combo deck, right? So if you want to play extra land, rather than trying to just gain card advantage like you would with the Courser, which is also a 3 casting cost, green 2/4, enchantment creature, you just play 31 lands, and so you're always stocked with lands. Right, so this is kind of a way to accelerate, especially if you come out early with Sakura Tribe Scout on the first turn. I think the Valakut angle is cute. It seems kind of just redundant to Azusa Lost But Seeking to me, but...
Well, hold on, think it through for a second. So you get half of Azusa's ability, right? But it's not a legend. It's a 2/4 instead of a 1/2. And then you also just get the Prismatic Omen for free on top of everything.
Yeah, so I think that the Prismatic Omen part is where a lot of the sauce comes from, because it's so easy to get those Valakuts, right, in this deck.
Yeah.
Like the entire deck is designed around doing something explosive with Primeval Titan, so it's almost a free roll to do that in this deck. I think.
Well, the other thing is you want the redundancy. Yeah. You're playing Once Upon a Time. They're literally just, you don't want to hit Sakura Tribe Scout with your Once Upon a Time. Even if you had 4 Azusa and 4 Primeval, and the Dryad's better in this deck, but even if you had 4 Azusa and 4 Primeval Titan, you're going to whiff with Once Upon a Time so much. Dryad makes it so that your Once Upon a Times are going to just hit so much more often.
Oh, sure, yeah. Just get more targets, right? I mean, but... What speed are you playing these at, right? I don't know. Is this a hard mulligan deck? Like, if you don't have an Amulet or a Sakura Tribe Scout in your opening hand, you just go to 6?
Yeah. I mean, Once Upon a Time, but yeah.
So,
like, I don't know enough about how much you can keep a Once Upon a Time. I assumed that the high end of the range, even if you don't have a Sakura Tribal Scout or a Vigor, if your hand has, like, if you have the nuts and Once Upon a Time, then go for it. But yeah, I think you mulligan pretty hard in this deck.
So I actually think this is a great strategy to play Amulet Titan in Modern, and
I agree.
The main reasons I have are, like, if you think that a lot of the rest of the format is towards the center, which it doesn't seem like it is right now. If you look at this top 8, I'm used to seeing these top 8s that are full of Okos, right? I recently played against a Death Shadow deck that sided in Oko against me, and it was very confusing that there was a deck that was both sacrificing food tokens and cycling Street Wraith. They're just like, this doesn't make any sense.
Dude, you get it coming and going.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I did lose a game to his Oko, so he must have been doing something right. But if you think that the format is towards the center, just being the most kind of explosive, get your material out and hit somebody in the face with a 6/6 deck, the high level of regularity, using Summoner's Pact, just knowing the routines so that you can, like, go get a Karu of some sort in Teleria West, find Packet of Negation, and cover your combo. Like, you just know the routines. The deck is really, really good if you think people are just going to play medium card advantage Magic. In addition, it's almost impossible to beat this strategy, barring something like Mana Screw or whatever, or just horrible draws, with most, like, fair aggro decks. So, like, all the fair aggro decks that are played in Modern, which is a pretty decent percentage of decks, are horrible against this kind of deck. So I think it's fabulous.
It also dodges Graveyard Hate, and it's not particularly. I mean, artifact hate does something, but it's not actually exposed to artifact hate, and graveyard hate does nothing. And I think that's a really cool position to be at for a fast combo deck.
Yeah, I think that the fact that graveyard hate does nothing is really good. It's a really weird kind of deck to try to fight, right? Like, how do you fight it with
Blood Moon?
Okay, Blood Moon's fair. And Blood Moon's hard to fight with this deck because engineered explosives can't get to the right size, right?
Well, it can. You've got forests and island, so your plan is to explosives for 3.
It's not easy.
It's not easy.
I guess you've got Reclamation Sage, Beast Within.
Yeah, definitely. And you've got Once Upon a Time to help dig to your combo of island and forest.
That is a compelling combo. And then they're going to give you mountain, right? So it's all good. It's all good.
I think Titan is also very distorting, and this particular deck is part of the reason why fast aggro is just getting pushed out of the format. If you look at some of the other Titan decks, because there were 4 of them in the top 8, there's some other versions. So the 7th place list played by Michael Leroux, Celestia Titan. This one has Arboreal Grazer and Secure Tribe Elder. And it's like, are those the optimal choices? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Either way, they're on plan clearly, right? But it's another Dryad of the Ilsean Grove version. And I think that time is going to show that Dryad of the Ilsean Grove is stronger than Azusa. And here we actually see it with 0 Azusa.
So this is just like a fair deck? Like, I mean, it's hard to say it's like a fair
insofar as it has 2 Field of the Deads, and it has 2 Valakuts. And remember, these are decks with like 4 Castle Garenbrig to help get out your Primeval Titan even faster.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just like this is a friendly Primeval Titan deck by comparison to some of the other decks. I guess it's still a Valakut deck due to Dryad of the Ilsean Grove, but like, this isn't like. I don't know how to put
this one is Primeval Titaning the least hard for a deck that doesn't do anything except Primeval Titan.
Yeah, but like, not to disrespect the deck, because this deck is going to put you on your butt, right? For sure, this is a powerful deck.
But it's grinding a lot more than it's killing you on turn 4.
Like, I am not terrified about playing against this deck on turn 2, 3. Right, that's the thing about playing against Amulet Titan. If you don't do something substantial to them by turn 3, you're probably just going to lose. Right? Like, here they're like, oh, even if I get my Primeval Titan, we're going to play another 6 turns.
The key, though, is that this one fights through interaction a lot more. If you're trying to, like, play reactive, if you're trying to, like, deal with the threats, this one just keeps grinding through you.
Yeah, I mean, it's got... First of all, this deck has got, like, Rest in Peace, so it can mess up some of those combo decks. It can just...
And Aven Mind Sensor.
I think Aven Mind Sensor is so crazy in this deck. This is literally a deck that's about searching through its own stuff, right? It's like got Primeval Titan, Search for Tomorrow, etc. And it's got this card that's just like, no, only one of us. It's very mean.
Me only.
Yeah.
Yep. It's good for the mirror. But man, it's tough. All these Titan decks sure do make Ashiok look great.
Oh yeah, fantastic.
How does this
deck not have Path to Exile?
Because who plays creatures?
I don't know. Wouldn't you want to path your opponent's Primeval Titan?
No. By then it's too late.
It's too late. Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. I guess
like a rat, like some sort of.
You could path the Urza, I guess. I don't know. But the 8th place list is a similar sort of grinding one, except that it also features Scape Shift. The old Scape Shift grind.
So passe.
I don't think you need. I don't think you need the Scape Shift personally. I also just don't think the Scape Shift is good enough without the Dryad. I mean, the Dryad is definitely the best thing going on, other than obviously Primeval Titan. But it's just, I think that when you've got the Dryad or Primeval Titan going on, you don't need the Scape Shift. So, how much is Scape Shift doing?
the more I think about the Dryad, the more great of a card it is, right? Like if you think about the Prismatic,
it's a lot stronger than Azusa.
Like Prismatic Omen was like a playable card, like not just a playable card, it's like a card that was played in good decks previously. So for one more mana, you're basically getting like a free 2. Not I guess like you're for the 1 mana, you're getting a 2/4 body and the privilege of playing additional lands each turn, that's kind of a great deal, right?
That's exactly on theme, and that's as on theme as it gets.
So
yeah, I think that that it's the real deal, and Titan is definitely going to be one to watch. I think I would avoid Scapeshift personally, but I think it's a great choice if you want to try to dodge Graveyard Hate and Artifact Destruction.
So the damping spheres are cool here, right? So they kind of work one way. Is that the thought process? People keep getting caught by their own damping spheres. Every time I see it,
you got to be careful. Yeah, I don't think most of them are playing Damping Sphere. But I think at least Gonzalez was. And part of that is that Gonzalez only has 2 Castle Garen Briggs instead of the 4 that a lot of people have. But you got to be careful with Dampening Sphere. But yeah, I don't know. It's obviously it's another option, you know. Like it's fine. You got to be careful though. I don't know that it's the right way right now, because I think that so much of the power in the format is coming from not the lands that are making multiple mana, but rather from either Urza decks or from Primeval Titan decks.
So just jumping back to Michael Arrow's deck, the Selesnya one. Look at this. What is he getting out of white? Like, what's the bonus that white is providing here? Because there is a snow-covered plains in the main.
Well, it's about the sideboard. It's extremely about the sideboard. Rest in Peace, Aven Mind Sensor. So Mind Sensor for the mirror. Rest in Peace, obviously. Celestial Purge and Path to Exile for interaction. That's what's going on here. Because it's not like you're doing anything with the white. You know, like you've got...
Not in the main.
Rest in Peace is no joke. I would use 3 here. It's just you got to play at least one color out of white or blue or black or red or something, because you're getting it for free anyway, because you have to have an extra basic of a different color to fight Blood Moon in some spots. This deck doesn't even have explosives. I guess that's more just the amulet build. But you need to have a plan against Blood Moon. Like this deck has Celestial Purge. The other thing is that you need to have stuff like Selesnya Sanctuary anyway. Yeah. And so once your Karoo is going to end up making 2 colors, you might as well play cards of that color.
I think that these decks with Arboreal Grazer in Modern, I'm into it. I think that's just a great card. I mean, how great is it with like Selesnya Sanctuary on turn 1? How great is it setting up with Sakura Tribe Elder?
Pretty good.
Like these decks are just such a brick wall to any of the aggro decks. Like it's just like Arboreal Grazer into Sakura Tribe Elder into 2/4 that's like playing additional resources. I mean, how great is that 2/4 next to Tireless Tracker? Actually, it's you're not even on your plan A yet. You're like, all right, yeah, I guess I could eventually get my Primeval Titan, but I'm just like sitting behind these absurd blockers, drawing 2 extra cards a turn right now.
There's a Simic build. You might want to take a look at that one. The 16th place by Blair Splat playing instead of the white. Blair has Ashiok Dream Render, Mystical Dispute, Aether Gust, and then instead of any sort of Rest in Peace action, they actually have Collector Oofy.
Oh, well, the Collector is a problem for people. This is like a Stony Silence that hits people.
Well, and that you can get with Summoner's Pact or Once Upon a Time.
Yeah. Big question for me, if you're going blue, is Uro not a reasonable investment to make?
I'm glad you asked. So Uro has been doing a lot of big things. If you go look over at the Modern prelim from earlier this week, the one of the 5-0 decks by McWinsauce is it's not a Titan deck, and not hardly the only Uro, but this is Uro Stoneblade with Jace the Mind Sculptor and Teferi Time Raveler fighting side by side, Cryptic Command and Force of Negation with Ice Fang Codal as an additional form of removal, and you're winning with Batterskull and Sword of Feast and Famine. There's a lot of powerful stuff, and as if that wasn't enough, there's a sneaky there's 2 Blood Moons in the sideboard that you cast off your 4 Arkham's Astrolabs.
Obvious.
You also have 1 Steam Vents that you can get with your 4 Flooded Strands and 4 Misty Rainforests. And as if all that wasn't enough, this deck even quietly has the Mystic Sanctuary Cryptic Command lock, where you can just keep bouncing. You can Cryptic Command, Mystic Sanctuary, Cryptic Command, Mystic Sanctuary. Do that a couple times in certain spots. But also you can just sometimes fetch up Mystic Sanctuary for extra value. And you've even got a pretty sweet toolbox with 1 Archmage's Charm. And how weird is this? Mystic Sanctuary for your Misers Once Upon a Time. Because what you really want is to go find a creature.
Yeah, this deck has got an insane number of different powerful things going on. It's crazy to me that, like, it has so many intense specialty creatures that are generating... Every single one of these creatures is generating card advantage, right? You can just... I can afford exactly 2 Snapcaster Mages. That's whack.
This deck is wild, right? And then the fact that you get Blood Moon out of the sideboard, I love that / hate that, but love that. And then, dude, Core Firewalker, that's respect.
1.
The Miser's Core. Well, how many do you need? You also have Timely Reinforcements.
Oh, that's the one that you can never beat if you're red. Like, Timely Reinforcements.
And you have
Mystic Sanctuary is... That's
to go get it? Yeah.
That's game.
Oh, yeah.
That's game.
This is a wild deck.
I think, like, it's got such a cool plan B. Right? Like, it's...
Well, I don't even know what its plan B, C, and D are, because it's got so many plans.
Well, I think the plan A is Stoneblade. Like, blue-white Stoneblade.
Go Stoneforge Mystic, go get Batterskull or Sword of Feast and Famine. That's pretty good. Yeah, sure.
Right, like, it has, like, all the trappings of that plan A, and it's got, like, you know... a little Planeswalker action. We see these kind of decks all the time. Couple Teferis, couple Jaces, 4 Stoneforges, you know, a little equipment package. Just win with whatever body happens to be around. A couple counterspells, you know, some sweepers. That's just, you know, we'll play a little kind of Tom Martell blue-white control action. But on top of that, first of all, Icefang Quaddle is, I guess it's I don't know if you see it coming or not. Like, if there's no green mana in play, but they have an Arkham's Astrolab or something. I mean, I guess everyone knows that the Quaddle's coming, right? But it's still a great, highly card advantageous way to punch up, generate card advantage, and so on. It's probably right, don't get me wrong. It's just weird for me to see a deck that's got 3 Ice Fangs and only 2 Snapcaster Mages. But they're all great. But I would say the plan B is Uro. Right? This, like, Uro is, I mean, he's literally I guess he's not literally a Titan. He's named a Titan, but he's an Elder Giant. Right? So he's a 6/6 for undercost, generating an enormous amount of card advantage. Try putting a Batterskull or a Sword on this guy. He's probably going to end the game pretty quickly, while drawing extra cards, etc.
Yeah. One of the nice things you can do with Ice Fang into Uro is the fact that if you Ice Fang, Ice Fang having Flash is actually pretty sick with Sword of Feast and Famine. You flash down the Ice Fang, and then it's the sickest surprise Squadron Hawk, you know? You put the sword on it, you attack, and then you make enough mana so that you get to then just get your Uro back. Like,
love it.
There's just a lot to like there.
I thought you were going to say you just, like, dive bomb with Ice Fang, punch up, goes to the graveyard, and then you just have fuel for Uro, which is also kind of true.
Definitely.
I love these Blood Moons, Patrick. I think that's...
I know. Yes. Absolutely. Plus, I actually like the main deck Ashiok because I think this deck is currently configured is a little softer to comp. Like, I think you could stand to be a little better against combo. Like, I think this deck is fighting fair in a very, very powerful way, but I think that it could stand to get a little bit more help against fast combo.
Yeah, I think this deck is this is the quintessential deck that gives you answers to a great many different kinds of problems. And if your stuff comes out and you play right, you can beat anybody. But you don't have a lot of just utterly dominating games in the way that some of these other decks do. Like Amulet Titan just comes out with its draw. If they don't do the specific right thing immediately, they're just going to get buried, right? Or if you look at that Urza Breach deck that we were looking at, it's got 14 different kinds of hyper combo. This deck needs to, kind of needs to pick its opponent apart, find the right tools. Are there right tools in the sideboard? One Rest in Peace only. But, they played in a different tournament, clearly, with their 5-0.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that the blue-white decks will have to become more aware of decks like that, or is it deck we were talking about?
Yeah. So there's there's another fast combo that's kind of got some interesting eyebrow-raising technology. Papo Lucho, the 4-1 deck here is a return to Infect. It's got Blighted Agent and Glistener Elf, but it's also got 4 copies of Scale Up.
So Scale Up is a sorcery for G. It says until end of turn, target creature you control becomes a green worm with base power and toughness of 6/4. If that creature has base power and toughness of 6/4 but retains Infect, then you're just popping them for a minimum of 6 poison counters when you hit them, right? That's the big play here.
Yeah, it's effectively +5, right? Because, like, your guy was already a 1/1.
Yep.
So, like, if you scale up an Infect creature...
Like a Blighted Agent?
That's 6, which means then that Vines of the Vastwood or Might of Old Kroxa is game, or Groundswell. So you can just play Glistener Elf on 1, and then on turn 2 you can play Scale Up and Might of Old Kroxa, and they're dead.
How do you feel about this strategy of blue-green Infect?
Well, one of the interesting things about it is how much, if people are really cutting lightning bolts, because this deck it's got napkins besides its plan A.
There's not much.
There's nothing else.
I mean, you could hide behind a couple of spell skites after sideboarding. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But you get your guys killed. That's the problem, right? Like, you have to kind of slow play it, hold back some sort of a Vines of the Vastwood or something, and your lands can get there maybe. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't have a lot past Plan A.
Recently, Mycosynth Lattice was finally banned in Modern. There was that just hideous. You put one Mycosynth Lattice in the sideboard, and then your
every deck.
Right, and then Karn the Great Creator just goes and finds it to lock them out. But Yamakiller's list is a Karn the Great Creator deck that just is like, okay, fine, forget it, we'll do it live. There's just no need for Mycosynth Lattice. It's a colorless Eldrazi deck of sorts. You've got Once Upon a Time and Dismember, but it's not like you do it, right? So this is a deck with and you've got forests that you can go find if you really need to. But I love seeing just Once Upon a Time with a single basic forest. It's like you're that. I mean, you've got Expedition Map and whatever, but like you're that dedicated. You're that all in that you just want to have a sick opener.
Yeah, you just want it on turn 1, man.
And so you're assembling Urzatron, but you also have Eldrazi Temple. And then you've got the whole Matter Reshaper, Thought Not Seer, Reality Smasher, blah, blah, blah. Chalice of the Void deck, But the big thing here, you've got Karn the Great Creator alongside Karn Liberated, and your sideboard, they've replaced. So instead of the Mycosynth Lattice, this sideboard goes several different directions depending on the matchup. You've got Sky Sovereign Council Flagship,
which is just an easy cast in this deck. Just for clarity's sake, all right, like 5 is no biggie here.
Well, Crew 3, dude, you got Matter Reshaper. Crew that bad boy, no problem. And then Mystic Forge for when you want the card advantage.
I love the Mystic Forge in this deck.
Yes. And then Sundering Titan when you still want to mana lock them. And of course, you got the usual trappings like Ensnaring Bridge and Liquid Metal Coating and Wormcoil Engine and whatever. But the big thing is trying to fill Mycosynth Lattice's shoes with Sundering Titan, Mystic Forge, and Sky Council Flagship, depending on the matchup.
So how do you feel about...
It would appear that Karn the Great Creator... Yeah.
Any kind of these Tron decks.
How do I feel?
How do you feel about these in the context of the format?
I think Tron is a little slow. Like, I think it's the wrong way to... I might be biased against Tron, but I think Tron is a powerful way to fight through people who try to fight fair, and you go over the top of them. But the problem is that this deck doesn't look like it has enough interaction to fight the other combo decks, and I think it's just not fast enough.
Yeah,
it's not like the other combo decks just fold the Chalice of the Void,
I'm not a big fan of Tron. I think Tron is the epitome of the second best deck at the table. And when there's only the second most powerful deck, I'd say. Like, when there's only 2 decks at the table, that's not a good place to be. Like, these decks are just going to get run over by the pure speed of the Titan decks we were looking at earlier. Right, like these guys.
Yeah, and that Urza deck too. That Urza deck is faster than this deck.
Like we do
the new
powerful thing. You're like, oh yeah, I have a 6/6 on turn 2 that draws 3 cards a turn. How you doing over there? And you're like, well, I'm gonna get Sky Sovereign and it's gonna deal 3 to something. Maybe it never will.
So with all these Titan decks, it's kind of interesting to see Thepin Swords list a blue-red deck. I guess you could call it a Thing in the Ice deck, but it's a blue-red deck that, you have to – it takes a certain palette to really appreciate. So Thing in the Ice, Snapcaster Mage, and Brazen Borrower, that's not too weird. It's like, why these? I guess it's fine, though. Like, those are all fantastic cards, right? But then it's about the Serum – so there's all the usual, like, Serum Visions, Opt, blah, blah, blah. But there's Archmage's Charm times 3, Force of Negation times 2, Deprive times 2, Cryptic Command times 2, Remand times 3, Shadow of Mother Freaking Doubt times 3.
I do love a Shadow of the Doubt. I tell you, like, I don't like this deck, but I really like Shadow of Doubt.
3 copies of Shadow of Doubt is a person who's prepared for the Titan matchup.
If they're going first and the opponent doesn't have the right draw.
I don't mean that it's effective. I just mean you thought about it.
I mean, the thing is, even when you get the Shadow of Doubt and it comes off the first time, the opponent has so much leverage on resolving anything that it's just like, oh, you drew 1 extra card? That was so cute. I cannot possibly co-sign this strategy. It is just not powerful. And it is not fast.
At the very least, you have to appreciate that despite 3 main deck Shadow of Doubts, they've got 2 Blood Moons and 2 Ashiok Dream Renders in the sideboard because at the end of the day, they're also realistic. There's Shadow, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, here's my question. We kind of glossed over some decks like this last week also at kind of the tail end. What is with Burst Lightning, and how is this a modern playable card? Like, this card doesn't really do 4. That's just not a thing that happens, right? Like,
it does 4 sometimes, and you got to kill the Grove. But the main thing about Burst Lightning is that it's not Lightning Bolt. This deck already has 4 Lightning Bolts. It would definitely play 5 if it could. What's wrong with Burst Lightning? Which one do you want to play?
I don't know. I play a lot of different ones that aren't Burst Lightning. I like a lot. I play Lava Dart. I play Lava Spike. I play Skewer the Critics. I play Rift Bolt. I don't know. Is the instantness so compelling here? I guess Burst Lightning is much better than Tarfire in a format where other people have Tarmogoyf, right? So maybe it's okay. I don't know. I've got some head scratching here. Maybe I'd rather have another Brazen Borrower.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like Brazen Borrower does 3 damage when it attacks and can deal with more different kinds of permanents on the front side.
So we talked about Ice Fang Kodal and Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath earlier, but the list by Bob the Dog, I love a good Bob the Dog, by the way. Heart Bob the Dog. So Bob the Dog is packing Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, and Ice Fang Kodal alongside Satyr Wayfinder and Coiling Oracle and Wall of Omens and Venser. Why? Why all these? And Eternal Witness, all this?
Oh, yeah.
Because this is a deck with 4 copies of Ephemerate and 2 copies of Soul Herder and a Thassa Deep Dwelling.
So this is like a 187 card advantage
Blink deck. Yeah, so Ephemerate is like the most busted momentary blink ever. It's white, exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So for 1 mana, you get to blink something of yours. And the card has rebound. So you get to blink your thing for 1 mana, and then next turn you'll blink something. That's crazy once you go to the trouble of playing all these 187s.
Yeah, so you're saving a ton of mana relative to Momentary Blink, which was already a very good card.
Yeah. And Soul Herder is the payoff, I guess, besides all the millions of 187s. But Soul Herder is 1 white-blue for a 1/1. Whenever a creature is exiled from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Soul Herder. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile another target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So when you play this card, that same turn you'll get to blink something. And from now on, you'll get to blink something every turn. So it's like a vulnerable Thassa, but it only costs 3. It also is growing.
Grows.
Not only from its own ability, but it grows twice from your Ephemerate, and it grows from Deputy of Detention. And from your Path to Exile.
Yeah, I think that is reasonable to say that card is the payoff, right? I don't know. I think it's a little awkward in terms of its casting cost at 3 for only a 1/1, but like everyone else is kind of propping it up. Soul Herder doesn't itself have a 187 capability. Just borrow everybody else's.
Right. Dude, can you really just win with 4 Force of Nature, or sorry, 4 Force of Negation? And
no, I have a hard time believing this deck can beat like the powerhouse combo decks that we were looking at before. I think like this deck could probably outgrind the Jund decks, right? Like this deck is grinding hard. Like almost every single card is a 2-for-1. So I don't know. Maybe they could just beat you with Ren and 6 and Liliana. Actually, they have so much card advantage grinding. Also, I could totally imagine this deck brick walling like one of the single strategy aggro decks. But could you imagine winning a tournament with this? Like where you had to get through the top 8 and there was like Titan decks or Tron decks or something on the way.
It's not my favorite fantasy.
Like they're just not scared of you drawing 3 extra cards with Wall of Omens. Like what did you draw? Well, I picked up an extra Coiling Oracle. Fascinating. It's just like, I'll attack you for 27. I will take it.
Yeah, that's no problem. No problem.
Yeah, I don't know. This doesn't seem like a one that I would want to take to regionals. Although it does seem like one that I would have like a riot if I was playing like modern FNM, right? Like this is just you're always doing something. Tons of like actions per turn, always getting a little bit of an advantage. If everybody's just playing on the nice field, this might be the best of the nice decks.
Yeah. So if you look over at the Modern League, Arkham's Astrolab gets pushed even harder. Finally, Ren and 6, Teferi Time Raveler, side by side, supporting Kess the Dissident Mage. So Kess the Dissident Mage is that 1 blue, black, red, 3/4 flyer legend. So it's during each of your turns, you may cast an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard. If a card this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead.
It's a 3/4 flyer for 4. On its front, and it has this kind of, it's like, what do you call this? Like a Howling Mine ability?
Well, you're snapcastering.
Yeah, it's like I guess it's a selection.
You do it immediately. So, like, for 6 mana, you get to immediately use an Assassin's Trophy or a Lightning Helix or a Glittering Wish again. And it as a one-of is really important. Not important, but you get more mileage out of it because you've got Bring Delight. Remember, this is a deck with 3 Bring Delights main deck, and then it also has 2 copies of Glittering Wish and another Bring to Light. Actually, no, I guess it doesn't even, I guess they don't even play the Bring to Light. They just play 3 copies. Because I guess at the end of the day, when you've got 3 Bring to Light and 3 Niv-Mizzet Reborn. But dude, look at all these cards. Icefang Kotal, that's a pretty good, like for Simic, oh yeah. Ren and 6, definitely good Gruul action. Teferi, oh yeah. Assassin's Trophy, this is so many sweet cards.
Glittering Wish for Selesnya, Supreme Verdict, I guess is in competition with Teferi for Azorius. I like the 1 Thought Erasure, that's hot. I think the 2 Unmoored Egos in the main deck are probably excessive.
I don't know. Like at least you're trying against combo.
Yeah, but wouldn't you rather have like 1 Slaughter Games? Like you're already gonna get like you can cast the Slaughter Games if you can cast an Unmoored Ego if you're getting the card off Niv-Mizzet Reborn or off of Bring the Light.
Oh yeah, but with Unmoored Ego you can name land.
Okay.
It's too much better in Modern. The ability to go hit somebody's Urza's Tower is so insane.
I buy it.
So what do you think about this sort of an approach?
Looks fun.
It's a lot of powerful things. You're going to have to help me understand. Is Tolsimir Friend of Wolves really the best we can do?
No, I don't know. How can a 3/3 for 5 with it's got like a pretty medium ability.
like this would not have been one of the first 7 options I would have thought to use here in this slot.
If I've got an Eidolon of the Great Revel in play, which I might, I've been known to have that in play in Modern, I would not want to play against Tolsimir Friend of Wolves. It doesn't trigger the Eidolon, and its abilities are unfriendly to my strategy. That said, it's a 3/3 for 5 with a pretty medium card advantage ability. Like we can do better, I think.
I have to imagine we can do better. Like, I don't know, man. There's got to be something else we can play. I mean, do we even need to have a different option besides Niv-Mizzet? Like, what if we just played a 4th Niv-Mizzet?
I think it is compelling to have a life gain out.
Okay.
I think
pick something else.
Like another Lightning Helix.
I don't know, man. Maybe Luxodon Hierarch. I don't know. Just pick something. Maybe Tolsimir's good because of Bring to Light, but it would be surprising to me. That's all. But yeah, I think this deck real sweet, and it does look like it would be a lot of fun. And I think the Unmoored Ego actually does go a long way towards giving you a legit plan against some of the fast combo decks.
There is a deck that didn't show up. I don't think it showed up in any of the recent stuff, but I think it might be a player in Modern. I can just rattle it off for you because it's a really compelling strategy. I don't know if you saw it. It's a weird deck. It's all mountain variants. So it has 22 lands. Most of them are fetches. It's got 4 Arid Mesa, 3 Bloodstained Mire, a single basic mountain, 2 Sacred Foundry, 4 Scalding Tarn, 2 Steam Vent, 2 Stomping Ground. So it can get Stomping Ground for green, Steam Vents for blue, and Sacred Foundry for white. It has a basic mountain. And on top of that, it has 4 copies of Dwarven Mine. So Dwarven Mine is the one that if you've got, the other mountains, you can put a 1/1 into play, right? So it has all these fetches to get the whatever color combination, mountains, Dwarven Mine. It even has Farseek. You can Farseek for Dwarven Mine, which is going deep, which I totally respect that. But the core combo is it's got Teferi Time Raveler and Silence for cover spells. Remember, it can get white, so it can silence. But its objective in life is to play, call it 4 lands, the last one being a Dwarven Mine, and then it polymorphs for 2 Emrakul the Aeon's Torn. And it has a bunch of subgames. It's got Teferi, Manamorphose. It has decent removal with a Braid and Lightning Bolt, but I thought it was just a really novel way to put together some cards.
That's really cool. I want to explore that a little bit more. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, I would totally consider playing this deck. Like you can put to either you could just like have an extra mana, cast the Silence, right, so that nobody's messing with you just right now, and then just polymorph. And then who really beats a Resolve Emrakul the Aeon's Torn?
Is Silence really the best you can do? Maybe it is. I love the Teferis, but I guess Silence it's not clear to me why Silence would be the best, but maybe it is.
I think it's the fact that it costs only 1 is a pretty good way to just for setup purposes. That's what I'm imagining, but I believe you. Like it's probably not the absolute best. That 1/1 token is very vulnerable though, right? That's the thing. You need it. Not very long, but you need it really hard for the tiny window that you need it for. But yeah, I mean, Teferi is just an insane way to cover it. So
sure,
once you've got Emrakul in play, it's all good. But this is actually a strategy I would consider exploring in Modern. It's just very inventive. The cards are really, really powerful, and I mean, you just really have to, I think, respect somebody who's splashing for Farseek. Like, I have 2 green sources in my deck for Farseek. Let's go.
Yeah. So those As Foretold Restore Balance decks?
Sure.
Electro Dominance and As Foretold in order to let you if you look at the league, there's a exotic new take. It's like turbo impossible to cast spells. So it's got 4 As Foretold and 4 Electro Dominance. 4 Restore Balance, which obviously you can't play. 4 Ancestral Visions that you can't play. 4 Crashing Footfalls that you can't play. Crashing Footfalls is create 2 4/4 green Rhino creature tokens with trample.
I mean, you could suspend it for G.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can. But you don't really. Because you just want to play it and get your beat down on.
Also, does this deck not even have any way to make G? Oh, it has a Stomping Ground. 1 Stomping Ground.
Yeah, and then you've got Finale of Promise as an additional way. So you've got lots of different... And then you also... And this is kind of a subtle one, but Dreadhorde Arcanist gets to play things that cost its power or less.
That's pretty inventive.
That's pretty nice, right?
Yeah.
If you obviously it's a little slower than a lot of the things this deck's trying to do, but there's only a couple of copies. But if you ever get to the Dreadhorde Arcanist, you're getting to it's like you get to just Electro Dominance every turn. And you even have this sort of backup thing of Serum Visions, Lightning Bolt, Op, Thought Scour. So you like find your stuff. But this deck's just like it's like a quarter of the deck is just stuff that exploit getting played for free. And a quarter of the deck is stuff that lets you exploit stuff and play it for free. And then you also even have Greater Gargadon, which you don't get to play it for free, so to speak, but you do get to play it for just 1, and that helps you set up your Restore Balance combos.
Yeah, so the big payoff here is Restore Balance can potentially beat everybody, right? Like, if you get the right combination of stuff not in play, they're going to lose all their stuff. And you can Restore Balance and have Greater Gargadon on suspended, and then he comes in, and then all of a sudden there's a 9/7 creature with haste in play, and your opponent has no permanents. Like that's the payoff here, right?
Totally, but that's not the only one. I mean, that's the one that's best with Restore Balance, because the Gargadon lets you eat all of your own land, ensuring that your opponent has nothing. But even if you don't have the Gargadon, it's not like after you Restore Balance, it's not like a suspended Crashing Footfalls and Ancestral Visions. It's not like those are bad.
Yep. But I think that there's enough catch-up here, like primarily represented by the Restore Balance, that this deck can potentially hang with like kind of those really powerful decks we were talking about before. Because this deck is like, these effects are powerful, but they're not powerful in the same way. They're powerful in a more interactive way, rather than just doing like a huge thing that draws a bunch of cards.
Yeah. Yet another crazy combo deck, because that's apparently what Modern is about these days. Misha's Bauble. Shout out to Misha's Bauble. But yeah, Misha's Bauble is packing their 5/0 league list. It's an Emrakul the Aeon's Torn, Grizzlebrand, Goryo's Vengeance through the Breach deck. And you're like, okay, I think I know what I'm looking at. Okay. And then you hear they've got things like Simeon's Spirit Guide and Once Upon a Time, and you're like, I'm not surprised. That sounds pretty good. And then you hear they're playing Insolent Neonate and Merchant of the Veil, and you're like, okay, they must not want to play blue. That's how they're looting, because they don't want to play blue for some reason. Okay. But then they've got Generator Servant alongside Ilharg the Razeboar.
Yeah, so Generator Servant is a classic. 1 in a red, 2/1 creature. It has the ability to tap and sacrifice to make 2 colorless, right? But if you use that colorless to make a creature, the creature gains haste. And then Ilharg the Razeboar is RR and conveniently 3 colorless, right? For a 6/6 trample. But when it comes into... Sorry, when it attacks, not when it comes into play. You can put a creature from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. You would have to return that creature at the beginning of the next end step. But I think when you're talking about cards like Emrakul the Aeon's Torn or Grizzlebrand, the damage will have been done.
To say the least.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting, I think. So you go turn 2 Generator Servant, turn 3 third land. So you're like, sacrifice a Generator Servant, you have 5. Ilharg, swing, bring in Emrakul. Yeah, that's some nonsense. That's 21 damage, right?
And that's, obviously you can Spirit Guide and go faster sometimes. And then you have all the usual Goryo's Vengeance is fast. But sometimes it's not like it's always this, but sometimes you can actually Grizzlebrand with haste off your Generator Servant. You only have 19 land, but you do have Once Upon a Time and Simeon's Spirit Guide, and sometimes the Generator Servant. Like, remember, this deck does have enough black that it can go get. Like, you can actually just cast Grizzlebrand.
Is this like a meaningful shift in like technology for the archetype? Like, I think I've played against versions of this deck that didn't have Generator Servant and Ilharg and instead played like Borobrigmaros and Nourishing Shoal, right? That were like fundamentally pretty similar, right? They also had Merchant of the Veil and Goryo's Vengeance, Emrakul and Grizzlebrand, but I guess they just were all about gaining life for Grizzlebrand exploitation rather than just fair Generator Servant. It's not even fair, right? It's like a fair.
No, setup. It's not.
Fair setup, unfair implementation.
Yeah, it's a little different of a mix.
I think this is probably a great strategy also. It seems like it's even more explosive than the Titan decks. Well, Once Upon a Time goes so far here.
Oh, yeah. Once Upon a Time, this is the best Once Upon a Time deck.
You lace together your strategy with this.
The fact that you can Once Upon a Time for your Simian Spirit Guide, or Once Upon a Time for Insolent Neonate or Merchant of the Veil, obviously you can find Emrakul or Grizzlebrand or whatever, but you even get to go find Generator Servant. The fact that Once Upon a Time is just so outrageous in this deck.
Yeah, I think getting the Generator Servant is really cool. And I think there's probably even games where Once Upon a Time for Merchant of the Veil is going to be very meaningful for you.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Because it's only one to haggle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So there's a not Jund deck, LKVN 5-0'd with in that same league, with a black-red deck that has Jund in its heart, despite no green mana. So you got Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunt. First of all, Lightning Skelemental. Let's just put that off top because apparently that's just what you do in these kind of decks now.
Yeah.
But 3 copies of Kroxa, powered up by 4 Ransack the Labs, which is the black strategic plannings. 1 in a black, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 in your hand and the rest into your graveyard.
That's a great card.
Yeah, from Modern Horizons.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And if you remember, it's not like Kroxa is the only saucy thing to take from the top of your deck and put into your graveyard. 4 copies of Seasoned Pyromancer, those are no joke. And even if you're just pitching stuff like Dark Confidant or Skelemental, this is a deck with Unearth. So, like, Ransack gets a little extra mileage there. And then when you're Lilianing, you can just discard your own Kroxa or your own Seasoned Pyromancer, and it'll be good. It'll be good times.
This deck seems.
But yeah, Ransack the Lab looks. This is like a really. Isn't this a really smart evolution of the Jund archetype?
It's what I know that it has a lot of stuff in common with the Jund decks we were looking at before, but I feel like it's an inheritor to Mardu more than to Jund.
Well, see, I actually was thinking the thing I liked so much about this is that even if one of its parents is Jund, this is not actually trying to be a Jund deck. It moves from – it's like, those earlier Jund decks where it's clear that they want to be something, but they're not quite all the way what they're trying to be. This is a deck that knows what's – like, this is a deck that's in year 3 of – like, this deck is well on its way to being what it wants to be. It started from Jund and Mardu roots, but it has moved into being its own thing. Ransack the Lab? Although now that you mention it, I kind of do want to ransack the lab for some Lingering Souls.
Yeah, I think, like, what's missing to me? Where's Blood Moon? Like, isn't this a good Blood Moon deck?
Seems like a pretty good Blood Moon deck.
Like the best
it would turn off your Castle Embereth and Castle Locthwain.
I mean, let's be honest about this. If it's one of the games where you need Blood Moon, you're willing to sacrifice Castle Embereth, I think.
Dude, Castle Embereth is sweet with Seasoned Pyromancer.
It is. What's even more sweet is not getting run over by their Urzatron.
Yeah, I would play Blood Moon. Fine, yes. At least there's Ashiok Dream Renders and Fulminators in the sideboard.
I could get behind this deck. This deck is...
I know!
This is very...
This is inspired. I love the Seasoned Pyromancer alongside Kroxa. I love the use of Ransack the Lab here. This is an inspired approach to Lightning Skelemental.
I keep looking at Ransack the Lab. I feel like you need to take like 3 damage or something to cast this, and you just don't. Or this is just a great card. How come no one's ever played this before?
Well, sure. Because it's like a counterfeit card that was just not legal in any format because it was in Modern Horizons.
Well, I don't know. I think that I might have to order a set of these because I would totally play this deck. Like, it has such good... I mean, it has Lightning Bolt and Fatal Push for its spells. Like, I'm in.
Yeah. And Inquisition and Thoughtseize, you could do a lot worse. That's like, you're really... like, if you've got Thoughtseize and Inquisition in your main deck, along with Kroxa and Skelemental and Liliana, you're almost a Smallpox deck.
Yeah.
Right? And then,
you really are.
And then you could easily play Blood Moon, but you already, like, this sideboard has Ashiok and Fulminator and Collective Brutality and Surgical Extraction. This is a deck that actually showed up to party.
The thing that I love most about this deck is looking at this list. I'm not sure if because it has a bunch of removal and like big guys and card advantage that it would dominate humans or it would get completely run over by humans. And the fact that I don't know actually makes me kind of happy.
Yeah, but okay, let's take the human matchup for a second. This is a deck that has 4 Lightning Bolts, 3 Fatal Push, a Terminate, a Dreadbore, a bunch of 1-mana discard spells, Liliana, which is great in concert with those other effects, and the sideboard has access to 2 Plague Engineers named Human. And then you've got, it's not like Collective Brutality is a 0, and Liliana the Last Hope? I would totally play against humans with this deck.
Yeah, I think so.
This 5-0 list is inspired.
I like it. This is deck of the week for me. I'm glad we have resulted on this deck.
Yes,
this is my favorite.
Awesome, dude. Lots of sweet stuff. I'm excited to see what you do with this deck because I don't even know that it's done cooking. I just think it's well on its way to like high honors.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Cool.
Awesome, dude. I'll see you next week.
In life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge here for jail or hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got